In today's global economy, quality matters. Benjamin Franklin once quipped, "The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten." Quality Matters is here to talk about all things quality. So whether you're looking to improve your business, getting ready for an audit, or dealing with failed inspections, tune in, check us out, then get back to doing work that matters.
Well, hello. Welcome back to the Quality Matters podcast. I am Kyle Chambers. And reminder, the Quality Matters podcast is brought to you by Texas Quality Assurance, where quality management gets simplified. So today we are bringing on another guest. We have Erin Urban here, and we are going to be talking about what is the hot topic of the day, which is a lot of the workplace issues that we have going on. So, Erin, welcome to the podcast again.
I'm excited to be here, Kyle.
Good to have you. Good to have you. So I know we've had you on before, but my gosh, that's been at this point nearly 2 years or more.
A lot has changed in 2 years.
Yes. So give kind of a quick rundown. I always just let folks introduce themselves and me try to botch their bio and experience. So just give me a quick rundown of kind of, what it is you do, a little bit about the business, and we'll dive into our conversation here.
Sure, Kyle. Well, what I do is I partner with leaders and teams to elevate their impact so they can achieve peak performance and increase income influence.
Well,
so that is really important.
Yeah, I think that's looking for.
Yeah.
But no, that's why I want to have you on, is because I think this is going to be a topic that you'll really be able to help speak to and help folks understand. I mean, I think everyone has a general idea that the workplace is kind of goofy, but beyond problems hiring and keeping retention, and we all hear the buzzwords thrown around like the Great Resignation and gig economy, but let's be honest, this means nothing without context. So I guess I'll kind of start and then get your 2 cents on it. Is we did a survey through the BIC Alliance and OGGN, and what we were trying to do is try to understand where businesses are seeing the biggest issues when it comes to contingency planning. Now, historically, especially Gulf of Mexico, hurricanes, always a big issue. After the freeze we had a couple of years, we expected a lot there. Of course, cybersecurity has been a creeping issue for the past few years, but all of those combined did not equal the concern that folks have over workforce instability, which I guess shouldn't have blown my mind, but absolutely did, because every single one of our clients talks about problems they have finding and retaining good talent. So that's kind of my intro to the topic. So, what's kind of your take on this craziness going out here?
Well, it should come as no big surprise that it's not necessarily one issue. I mean, wouldn't it be great if I could just say it's just this and
exactly,
and that's it. We walk away. We're done. Just solve that. You're good. 2 thumbs up. Keep rolling.
Right.
Hashtag future of work.
Yeah. Well, I think we'd have a career in politics if we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? We solve all the world issues. There.
Right. Done.
It does. So it's really interesting you bring up the Great Resignation. I think in order for leaders and owners to understand how to actually tackle this and show up in this space, a little history probably wouldn't go amiss. So let's understand.
Context is always key.
Yeah, understanding prior data, maybe root cause analysis. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at what happened. What set the stage? Right? I mean, didn't suddenly 2021 everybody's like, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll just quit. Take this job, and you know what? But that's happening. So why is that happening? Well, 2020. I don't know if anybody noticed, but we had this thing called a pandemic, and it made things a little sticky. Just a little bit. But it was the first time a lot of people had in their entire lives to pause. They had to pause. I call it the pandemic pause, or 2020 is also called the Great Reflection. The Great Resignation. We had the Great Reflection in 2020. So what happened was they woke up, they looked around, they said, I really don't like what I'm doing. I don't like the management. I don't like the culture. It just didn't work for them, right? There's a whole lot of things that we were putting up with. Let's just be honest, ladies and gentlemen. We put up with a lot. And because why? Well, we were afraid for our jobs.
Yeah.
Right? So we put up with a lot up to this point because of fear. Right? It's a big driver, not necessarily
we've
the right
run
driver.
into that here. We've when we were looking to find a new employee here maybe 6 months or so ago, and the problem we ran into is what we called golden handcuffs. And it was kind of my issue when I quit my job to start the business here. Is you got a good paying job, you've got the security, and you're just shackled and chained to it. So in any case, I completely get where you're coming from there. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right. No, because I can, please interrupt me because I'll just keep going. As we spoke before the show, I'm pretty passionate about this topic.
Yep.
It's so fascinating what's going on right now. So I'll jump ahead a little bit and then I'll come back to give you a taste of what we're experiencing at this moment in our human evolution. Is we're on the threshold of an entirely new era. It's an exciting and challenging time. So what's leading up to this? What's going on with this great reset? So we're really what we're seeing overall is a great reset, of how people want to behave, be treated, show up in the workplace, how they want to work, full stop. So all of that is being realigned.
Right.
We're not quite sure what will come out of this. I call it the never normal is what we're in right now.
I like that. I'm gonna have to use that.
Yes, feel free, please do. A lot of people say, "Oh, and the new normal." No, there's no normal yet. We're in a strong change cycle. We're not quite out of that yet. Whenever we're offering a new era, like in the 1920s, for example, World Wars, a lot of change. We're going through something similar. Different complexities, different players, different paradigms. We have technology. There's a whole lot of influencers here. So it's not just the one and done. Oh, it's people want to work remotely.
There's more to that.
It's more than that, to be fair. So you did a survey. I did a survey because I wanted to find out, all right, what is driving? I know, data nerd, Lean Six Sigma, my black belt. I can't help it. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to get data. So I went out there and I did I did a survey. And what I have here, you say, check the paper, make it sound official.
Right.
What do they do on the old? They tap the papers in front of them to make it look really fun. Yeah, that's what I'm doing here. Just imagine them doing the tapping the paper thing. So my research was, okay, first of all, what is driving this great resignation? Why are people leaving? Well, 219 people said toxic work, replied to the survey, and 47% of those said toxic work cultures.
Okay. I wouldn't disagree with that in large part. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the company I was working at before, and I think it is one of the better examples of what was out there, but it was still the case. Like a 60-hour week means you're lazy. And that shouldn't be normal.
It's not. So let's put a bookmark in that because I want to put a pin in that. That's a very, very important example of the paradigm shift we're experiencing. We put up with a lot of crap.
You can say it.
On your podcast. I don't know.
I don't think we're not monetized on YouTube, so go ahead and say it.
Okay. So we did. We put up with a lot of things that that aren't healthy, beneficial, do not fuel peak productivity. I mean, I could get it. Self-care out the window. What's that? Self-care? You have the nerve to talk about self-care? I mean, that was the old paradigm.
Yeah.
That's shifting. So yes, toxic work culture, 47% of 219 people. So I asked, okay, great. So what's driving that?
Yeah.
Right. 175 people responded to that, and they said 58% poor leadership.
Wouldn't disagree either. Especially when you look at the amount of emphasis that's put on, leadership development. It's honestly
thrown out the window for the past.
Yeah. Yeah. And what there is such high level fluff that no one can grasp their head around it. I mean, when I mentor any new quality managers, the first thing I tell them, said, you need to do your own little mini version of dirty jobs. Like, get your butt out there, put a hard hat on, put the gloves on, forget your job for the day. You're a weld helper today. You're out in the wash pit today. Just go do the dang job. And in any case, just it's you don't find that any sort of leadership training for the most part today.
Right. And beyond that, even for those people who've been through that, like, let's just say that's where they came from. What has happened, not in all cases, but quite a few cases. X person, been at the company so many years.
Yep.
Could have not a leadership bone in his or her body.
No.
But they were there. And because they've been there for a while, guess what? They get promoted. So what happens? They lose a great individual contributor and gain a really bad manager. Good for you. Well, nobody has done historically really any investigation and understanding, okay, what are the key characteristics and traits of good leadership?
Yep.
And by the way, anybody can be a good leader. Just know that some personality styles and work styles work
better,
more amenable for that than others, and others needs a little bit more awakening and awareness and self-work. Because
I think that was me. I spent a lot of time talking with Darcy recently. Like, my gosh, if I had known, when I started the business, like, I was very, very good and competent at my job. Very, very good, very, very competent at my job. That accounts for maybe 15 to 20% of the skills I need today, running a very small business where I'm still intimately involved. That's only 15, 20% of the skills that's necessary. I had to learn the rest of it the hard way.
Yeah. I had to learn the hard way too, because I was convinced that leadership meant you were super professional.
Right.
And you didn't spend time in small talk and you got things done. And you bottom line, what's next, driven.
Right.
Those are all, what to deal with. So, and surprise to nobody, I did not really get that leadership role that I was expecting until I learned to appreciate people. So here's the deal, brass tacks. Leadership equals people skills.
Yeah. I agree.
You get over the need for to be an expert in the thing and learn how to deal with people, or don't bother. Like, don't go there, because it's just going to be miserable for everybody.
No, totally agree. You're talking to a hardcore introvert computer geek right here. Had to learn a very hard way.
Yeah, so did I. I mean, I had to get a big slap in the face, and by the way, your team doesn't like you. I was like, oh,
yeah.
What? What did I do wrong? I thought I was super professional. Yeah, that's what you did wrong. Congratulations. Well, we live by that. That's the old paradigm. That's the old way of thinking. So it's very interesting. Now, followed by the 58% of leadership, the other 25%, so that was number 2, said burnout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're like, I'm out of here because I'm toxic work environment. I'm burned out. As you mentioned, the 60 hours a week was considered lazy. That's not sustainable.
No.
So what we're seeing is a reinvention of the workplace. Now, some companies are getting on board and they're like, oh, okay, well, let's understand, particularly with the up and coming generations, what are their expectations? What do they need to thrive, et cetera? Now, know that the up and coming generations have been labeled as lazy.
Right.
Okay. So Gen Xers and baby boomers. I'm a Gen Xer. Nobody talks about us. We're like, who cares, Gen Xers?
Yeah, y'all didn't exist.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, Gen Xers and baby boomers. You're just jealous. You didn't think about this before now. Right. Self-care, well-being. What? That's for
and a lot of the dynamics are just culture outside of work has changed over the past few decades as well. I mean, we don't have the tight-knit social structures that we did even when I was a kid. And I'm what they call an elder millennial. And even as a kid, my social structure was my neighborhood, and I'd ride my bike 3 or 4 miles to see all my friends in one day. And that just doesn't happen much today. And so what we used to get in our, home and social and church and whatever other organizational structures we had outside of work, those are all kind of weird and fragmented now. And I mean, it makes sense that our work, the way we operate and interact in work has to change as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got basic needs regardless where they're fulfilled.
That's right. Right. We do have basic human needs, and there's a few basic laws of how humans work best together. And top-down hierarchical leadership is not one of them. It isn't. So moving forward, I mean, collaborative leadership always has fueled better results. It's very interesting. Just this past weekend, birthday party out of the blue. Don't know this guy from Adam. Turns out he's a former top GE executive.
Mm-hmm.
Was like ranked number 3 out of the world as far as his team performance and leadership. He burned out.
Oh,
hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now he's not doing that anymore. However, and to be fair, he's, retired and all that good stuff too. But he said, you know what? He goes, I believe in servant leadership, because they wanted to come in. Okay, GE. Okay, that's working. How can we emulate this? And they couldn't wrap their heads around servant leadership. He says, it's about the people that work for me, not about how awesome I am. He didn't even have a college degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, well, that's a whole other fun topic that we could go into there. So I gotta stop myself. But, there's been so much emphasis on, and I think this kind of feeds in what you're saying, on these formal structures and very formal methods. But you can't just rip the rug out from under that structure either. Say, well, no, we're going to go with everything informal, the education, and none of that matters. The way in which we communicate no longer matters. The way we dress no longer. You can't just rip the rug out and have another organizational system step in its place.
Right. Right. You're absolutely right. So how do we shift? How do we shift the paradigm in a healthy way?
Yeah.
Well, first is understanding the people.
Like,
what are the people asking for? And typically with, I don't have to say this is true for everybody, but what we're hearing more strongly out of those people who identify with Gen Y and Gen Z generations is they want to be invested in.
Mm-hmm.
That talent development, that thing that we haven't spent any money on for the past 15 years. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
That's one of the major reasons. So it's very interesting. Side note, and I'll come back to this. I've been doing some conversations with the likes of Doer Institute, Rice University, et cetera. Like, what went wrong?
Yeah.
So, poor leadership. What went wrong? Well, economic up and down, swings and roundabouts. The first thing to go has been T&D, training and development. And when training development goes out the window and you're not investing in your people, you're not investing in your leaders, even with half-butt programs, it was something, right?
Right.
And you're not doing this, then how are you supposed to develop your leaders? You can't. So we're really pushing coaching, executive level coaching for mid-level and entry-level managers because it's really important. This is the level. Yeah, okay, executives, great. That's important too. And the people who are the closest to your customer is where you need to spend most of your energy. And we're not doing that.
Well, I was having a fun conversation with someone just a few days ago. They're you've probably seen stuff like, you've got like these new hard hats that have like, built-in heads-up display and, all this different type of stuff. So he's trying to talk like, well, how do we get this integrated? And there's tons of cool stuff in it, like, tracking your heart rate, your pulse, tracking, the angle you're standing, and try to monitor fatigue and all this. And they're coming at me with all these fun bells and whistles about what it can do. And I'm sitting here scratching my head, and he's like, so what do you think? You think, how could I get people to adopt this? And I said, you just gave me all of the points for the top level executive who never sees the person on the floor, why they would adopt it. He's like, well, fine. How do you get the guy on the floor to adopt it? I said, there's only 2 ways you're going to get the guy on the floor to adopt it. And again, I'm talking about someone that's like, a welder, a mechanic, whatever. So I said, 1, you got to prove that's going to decrease their daily stress load. So if it means that they're not going to get reamed every time they have to put a project on pause to wait for their super to give them some advice, they're going to buy in. And 2, if you can increase your physical comfort. And he was showing me one device, and I'm like, dude, I wouldn't want to wear that if I'm out on the shop floor all day. Man, that's going to be in my way. Ain't no way I'm wearing that.
It's a safety issue.
Yeah, and it's just like, but people so often skip over that. So, I mean, I'm just glad to hear you say that, because it is that middle management point that so often gets glossed over. They are the interaction between the end user, whether the end user is your internal employee for some program you're selling or your legitimate customer that's out there. That person is the point in contact. They've got to be able to translate between the executive jargon to the average Joe. And that's tough.
Right.
That is a tough skill, and it can't be taught in university.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we were talking about, let's just say the poignancy of influence and impact is very different at the executive level. And by the way, we have a train, and they're passing through just for this podcast. By the way,
right.
Just for this podcast, not for any other podcast. Just this one. So he'll be emphasizing my points. But yes, when it comes to the poignancy of the influence that you're seeing and where it resonates on the value chain and where it resonates particularly with your customer and how it influences income is very different at the executive level than at the frontline leadership and management level. The frontline leadership and management level is where your impact to the customer has the most influence.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So if that's where you want to see a change, that's where you need to put your energy. Now, at the executive level, we're talking about shareholders, we're talking about Wall Street, we're talking about, train.
Right.
We're talking about things. There's some things in life you can't control, and that's one of them.
Yep.
So, it's a different type of influence.
It is.
So it really depends on where you want to see your emphasis and your difference in as far as your money and your margins and your income.
So how do you reach those mid-level frontline leadership positions? I mean, how do you educate them? Because obviously it is a completely different skill set that I think just so much gets glossed over. And it's also a skill set that I think may have been more readily available 20, 30 years ago than it is today. I was raised on a computer, right? My social interaction was sneaking out of the house for a LAN party in high school, right? Not exactly learning great people skills. So how do you teach this to the folks coming up in these positions?
Good point. So what I'm finding with the executives that I'm coaching is they're like, what is going on? It's like, you now need to teach these younger folks coming in how to people. You need to teach people how to people because they haven't received that education. They haven't. And to be fair, neither did our generation. I mean, when I started learning more about, what they call soft skills, which has hard consequences, basically behavioral science type knowledge and having that and understanding that. It's like, why don't they teach us in high school? It would solve a lot of the world's problems, to be honest.
I agree.
Don't. And that's not the competencies that, for whatever reason, our federal government want to see. I don't know, but there you go. So now leaders and organizations are tasked with needing to teach their people how to people. Yeah. So that's number one. And then understanding, okay, how can I invest in these people other than teaching them how to people? Like, what do they want? How do they want to grow?
Yeah.
Because that's the number one I want to be invested in. Then of course they want some flexibility. They don't want to hear, oh, you only work 60 hours this week. What's wrong with you? That's not what they want to hear. They definitely want the work-life balance.
Yeah. And that's another one of these fun little kind of buzz terms that gets thrown around that folks don't really have a good understanding of. And I would very easily say that there truly is no right answer. But okay, so here's something we do. I'm kind of curious what your 2 cents is on this. So we have a philosophy we call 95-5. And so what that means is while you're on the clock, you've got certain designated work hours. Again, this changes with some jobs that, don't have such set work hours, but we work with small business. So we've got a good, kind of 8 to 5 is when you need to be available. So what we say is when you're on the clock, I expect 95% of your effort is dedicated to the business, but I get it. Your kid's going to get sick. You're going to have some late bill that you've got to call in, yell at the phone company for. Like, you got crap that comes up. Life happens. But at the same time, when you're off the clock, we also know that sometimes there's that emergency situation that has to happen. And I may need to give you a phone call at 7 o'clock at night or send you a Teams message or something. And I might need a quick response to it. But we both have to respect each other in that space. And so that's what we kind of talk with a 95-5 relationship. It's why you're here. Take care of your family, take care of your work, take care of your home. But at the same time, we need a little bit of flexibility both ways. Kind of curious what your thoughts are on that.
Right. And some people would say there is no such thing as work-life balance because the two are so blended, particularly for those folks who are working remotely. And they have a point there.
They do.
However, it's all about setting expectations. So you set very clear expectations, what the behavior is expected.
Yeah.
It's when those clear expectations aren't set is when the dissonance happens. Because, I hear it all the time. Oh, yeah, they told me X when they interviewed me. Now it's Y.
Yeah.
I mean, stop lying to your people. That's
a simple one there.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Really. Anyway, don't get me on that soapbox. But, setting clear expectations.
Sure.
What is work-life balance? Well, here's a concept. Now, this is maybe a little bit of a stretch for some. Instead of focusing on when and where people work, it's largely immaterial unless it's, shackled to your job, of course.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the details.
Yeah.
Set the expectation. Or when is X due? Let's just say it's a report or it's a deadline or it's some sort of completion. When is the deliverable due?
Yeah.
What does that deliverable look like? What are the expected outputs?
Yeah.
And then let go of it.
Yeah.
Sit back and let people do their job.
Well, you just used one of my favorite terms, outputs. I mean, we look at this, talk about, and this is nothing you're not familiar with. So you take a look at it from a process map perspective. We've got our inputs mapped to goals and objectives, and we've got our outputs mapped to our checks and measures. Cool. What do you need to get the job done? Make sure it matches your goal. How do you know it's complete? When it's done, great. Did it get done on time? Yes. If it's not going to get done on time, try to give me a few days notice so that we can retool, make whatever adjustments we need. But that's where
communication. That's a recurring thing.
Yes. Yes.
Don't abuse the system.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean,
so what about folks that do work remote that have such a hard time drawing those lines? I know I had this issue when I first started my business. I worked from a home office and with 3 little kids, a little tough. So what about folks that do work from home? Because there's tons of benefits to it. For one, you just save a crap ton of money in gas, and especially now. How do they keep it from just all washing together?
Well, I tell people this. If it wasn't for the fact that I am a rampant, organized project manager at heart, I would have never made my business work. I knew going into it, I had to establish certain boundaries for myself, certain expectations of how I'm going to show up in my business. Because as a self-employed individual, I need to do that. Now, what's very interesting is because we've taken the standard corporate structure and now shoved it into our personal lives, no one really gave us a playbook.
Right.
Yeah. So no one sat people down and said, okay, there were a few blogs and articles, probably some YouTube videos that happened eventually, and maybe some people watched them, maybe they didn't. They talked about how to set up basically your own business. So as everybody needs to be the entrepreneur of their career. Yeah. And when you come at it from that standpoint, that means you are self-authoring. And to be honest, you always were.
Right.
So now it's just more obvious.
And that's something I used to teach, and still, I guess, when we do the safety consultations, especially, is you are effectively your own owner-operator. Whether you're in the leadership position or you're on the well table or in the inspection bay or wherever it is, you are your own owner-operator at that moment in time. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. You're responsible for you. And, now that concept can be taken way off in the left field and get kind of wonky. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for you. But it definitely gets tough working at home. We've got one team member, and I told him, it's like, look, I'm going to pay for you to have an office because I just don't think it's going to work very well for you working at home. Whereas we've got another one, and he said, you know what, Kyle, I set up a whole dedicated room in our house. We reorganized everything so that's my work. And when I go in there, work hat on. When I leave, work hat off. I'm like, cool. But there's so many different options. So how would a company regulate this? Because you really want it to be, there's a value in one size fits all. And so companies want to go that way because then it doesn't seem like I'm treating one person fairly or another person unfairly. So how could a company differentiate but still not be perceived as playing favorites?
Right. I don't think it's about playing favorites. I think it's about understanding your people. So one of the overlooked aspects of understanding how to get peak performance out of your team is if you ignore their work styles. So if you ignore their work styles, you're going to try to shove everybody into one size fits all mold. And quite frankly, that doesn't work.
No.
So, I mean, just something simple as people who are more reserved or introverted versus more outgoing and people focused or extroverted. Those individuals are going to need very different workspaces. People who are extroverted need to be around people. Like,
yes,
I'm serious. This is not an option. Like, in order for them to have peak performance, they have to be around other people.
Yeah. They'll go just as crazy, as someone else would sitting alone in a closet for a week.
Totally unproductive.
Which I would totally take be a great vacation.
Yeah.
Daddy's on vacation. Leave him alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's enjoying it.
No. But introverts, on the other hand, people who are more reserved, they don't have any problem with the not being around people. So just at that fundamental level. Then you have other aspects. I like to lean on the DISC side of work style assessments because it's simple, it's easy to implement, it's easy for people to understand, it's easy for people to leverage. And it truly does help people in team performance, not only understanding themselves, but understanding our interface with others, yada, yada, yada. I could go on, I won't. And it's really important to have a more adaptable environment than just everybody works this way. Well, that's just not, like I mentioned before. Establish the inputs, establish the outputs, what the deliverables are, and let the rest be.
Let the process work differently for each person.
Right, and particularly for the generations coming up now. They are not going to put up with other people telling them how to get from A to B. So from input to output.
Yeah.
Establishing expectations and establishing boundaries is important.
Yeah.
However, telling them, okay, well, you have to sit at a desk and you have to
Right.
That's the old way. That's the old way of doing things. It's not going to be the future of work. Okay. The future work's much more fluid. The other thing that people really need moving forward into the future working to increase retention is a safe environment to express themselves without fear of retribution. Or retaliation, rather.
So dig into that a little bit deeper, because that can, again, as most things, you take the idea to its logical extreme, and it's totally wonky. So how do you allow someone, to do that without, I guess, disrupting what the culture of the organization is? Right.
Well, one great example is leaders absolutely must have one-on-one time with each of their team members that's scheduled. At a fundamental human level, it sets the expectation that, yes, I will have one-on-one time that is a safe environment for me to discuss whatever I need to discuss with my immediate manager, supervisor, whatever. That's really important. And I won't be judged. It's no stupid ideas. So this person, the manager, really does need to be trained in how to create this sort of environment for their people.
Well, for folks that aren't accustomed to trying to do that, how would that manager structure that meeting? Like, I mean, just some tips, like how frequently should this occur? How long should these meetings be? Are there any, minimum questions you'd ask on a weekly or whatever the basis is? I mean, we've got our own system here, but I'm kind of curious what your recommendations are for it.
Well, for one-on-ones, it's just, not stand-up meetings where you're in a group. Obviously, it's one-on-one.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, that would not necessarily be appropriate, although some people do it well. It just depends on the culture. Fair.
Yep.
So this is more something that can be repeatable across a variety of industries without getting weird very quickly. So one of the things we want to do is have it at least monthly. For some organizations and some teams, that's too often, so minimum quarterly. But I would encourage monthly because there's a lot of things that come up in a month and a person needs that one-on-one time. So yes, have an agenda about how the flow will be. Okay, so just as maybe it's as simple as, okay, you share, it's open forum, you share with me any top concerns, issues coming up. This is not, however, a time for a status update.
Nope.
Not a status update. No,
Gotcha.
That's stand-up meetings. That's team meetings. This is not so how are you doing on that project? And this is also not a time for your employee to rate your company.
Yeah.
Not time for that at all.
Yeah. Well, we do something, it's a little different. I'm kind of curious your take on this here as well. And this is just kind of what I've put together, being the introvert that's had to learn the extroverted skills, and being the closet geek that doesn't like to talk to anyone, that now that's my job. So what I have come up with here is we have a weekly, what we call set and match. Now, as we bring more folks on, probably gonna have to shift that to every other week, or I'm just gonna spend too many hours a week just chit-chatting with folks. But what we do is I'll ask them to fill out a survey on a weekly basis, and we'll kind of review this. And it's just useful for me to take a look at. Gives me kind of a litmus test, I guess, of how the folks are doing. So rate 1 to scale. What's your stress level? Now, your stress level may be at home, it may be at work. I don't know, but I'm just kind of curious on average. How are you doing? How do you feel with your workload? 1 to 5. 5, about my head's about to explode. I can't take it. I ideally want someone to be between, maybe a 3 and a 4. I'll ask, what was the high point of your week? What's the low point of your week? Half the time it's work stuff, half the time it's not work stuff. It's kind of interesting to see. And then this is about as much as we go to on our status update, which is something I'll probably take a look at maybe in revising, is I'll say, what are your goals for completing this week? What was your goal last week? And I'll just go through last week's survey. Well, did you get all this finished last week? Did you plan to do it? What happened? What went wrong? What went good? Hey, what are you going to do this week? Cool. And then, we're going to talk about it next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's great for a stand-up meeting for sure. Yeah. For one-on-ones, you go a little bit more in depth, a little bit more personal. Okay. So maybe 45 minutes, even an hour, depending on how many people you have reporting to you. You don't want to make it too short. You don't want to make it less than 30 minutes.
Yep.
And yes, does that take a lot of time? If you have 30 people reporting to you, absolutely it does. Get over it. You need to do it. Because if you don't, well, let me give you an example of what happened. So I've got a client, and she is the only female engineer out of many people. Mm-hmm. So it's a very competitive environment because the leader makes absolutely no time, zero one-on-one time for his team because he's very busy.
Right.
You're not sure doing what, but regardless, he's very busy, so he can't waste his time.
All the more difficult with folks working remotely, because it's not like you're just going to have a little 30-second catch up while you're both getting a cup of coffee.
Right. Yeah. So it has to be more intentional in the virtual space. Yeah. Yeah. I got to rub elbows in the hallway. So she gets stomped on because it's like this elbow, it's basically when the kids aren't getting attention around the dinner table, hey, look at me, Dad. Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. That's what it's like. It's the same mentality, oh, well, I did this week and I did this week and I had to tell her what to do. And it was like, what? And she's totally incensed. Of course, she's more reserved, so she's not comfortable speaking up. So we're really working on how to deal with this competitive environment, or even if she should stay.
Yeah.
Right? But that's what happens. That's an example. Or worse yet, you just don't get something done because you're not quite sure what the priorities are. So, during a stand-up meeting and in status meetings, these are when you should be expressing set priorities. But if it's something personal, you really don't feel comfortable sharing, then you at least have that time coming up in a week or so you can chat with the boss, right? So it's a lot of value there.
How would you encourage new managers, younger folks in these leadership positions to have those conversations without crossing, this imaginary line that we have of work and home life? Again, breaking this balance between work and home life. How do they know this could get me in trouble with HR versus this is building a legitimate rapport and relationship with my people?
We really shouldn't have those kinds of questions when we're doing a one-on-one meeting, but just in case they do come up, actually I shared in a Forbes article just a little while ago why one-on-one meetings are a waste of time, and I got a lot of people going, what? Because they are, because people don't use them correctly. They don't have an agenda, like I mentioned before. They don't have any emphasis on professional development, so personal growth of the individual. We're not talking about, hey, what goals do you want to achieve? They're also not providing support, so there's no feedback loop. But when it comes to anything that gets a little sticky, if you're concerned about something that's getting a little sticky, definitely go to HR, definitely get some guidance there. Typically, these one-on-one meetings, that shouldn't necessarily come up, but hey.
So give me an example then of what that would be, because here's kind of what I'm looking at. So again, we've got kind of a, not a big team, but we've got kind of a mixture. So we've got from teenage kids, adult kids, grandkids, and babies at home. And so there's all sorts of fun conversations that come up with how stressed out they are, how tired they are, how difficult this is, how difficult that is. So what are some maybe standing topics that you would suggest to bring up during these one-on-ones?
Well, like a part of the agenda would probably be definitely the professional development part, because that's a big part. And one of the main driving reasons behind the one-on-one is fueling that personal talent development, right? Helping that individual grow as a professional and as a person. And also, it's not just a complaint session. That's what you don't want it to be.
Yep.
That's not what it's there for. And on the flip side, there needs to be a space for people to share their concerns. So typically, the loose structure would look at any when someone comes into a meeting with me, for example, my team, when I was leading a team of continuous improvement professionals. Okay, is there anything that is a burning bush right now that you need to clear before we can be present for this meeting?
Okay.
So that would be number one, because in order for them to be present, if there's something up here they're noodling on and they just can't get past that, they're not going to be present and don't be productive. So that's number one. And then number two, okay, is there anything that's come up for you, like top wins, anything that's a concern? So wins and concerns. And then we would, anything else. It's not as structured as you really think it needs to be.
Yep. Well, here's the reason. I know I'm kind of probably harping on this maybe a little bit more than expected, but part of the reason I do is because between, the status update meeting to a one-on-one, those lines can get very, very blurred for someone that's inexperienced. And again, we can go off on either tangent. The one-on-one can get too personal, and I'm no more involved in your personal life than I, as your manager, ought to be. Or B, this is just another chance for us to talk about all the stuff that got done last week and needs to get done this week.
Yeah, neither one of those are okay.
Okay, so kind of going back to where we started and finish this out. So the workplace is changing dramatically. I agree. We are seeing a massive paradigm shift in the way that our workplaces operate and function. There's never going to be getting back to normal, and new normal, whatever it may be, is probably going to have a variety of flavors, and we're probably not going to see it for a while. So what are some things that organizations can do immediately, to start working on to build better retention and to make themselves more appealing for new talent that they're trying to bring in?
Right. So ditch the ping pong tables and the pizza parties. Sorry.
Yeah.
That was always my biggest beef, even pre-pandemic. One of the things is invest in your people, get to know who the heck they are, what drives them, what are their values, and also have enough flexibility without being a doormat. Like, you have enough flexibility for people to get their work done in a way that suits their work style. And have it established that it's not a bias or it's not a favorites program. It's just simply about how can we support you, how you work best to perform great work. And then train your leaders, your emerging leaders, your middle managers, all the way up to the stratus, really, but give them the energy they need to learn how to be leaders of people, not just processes and administration tasks. That's not enough.
Nope. I think that is probably about the most ideal way to finish the conversation there is, and this is something I say so often as well when we're doing these our QMS bootcamp trainings, is at the end of the day, you have to treat people like people. I mean, that's really it. It sounds so simple. It's incredibly difficult to do, but you have to treat people like people. So where could folks go if they're looking to learn more to do it? They're like, great, I'm all on board. I need to make some improvement. How can folks find out more to make improvement?
Very simple. You can go to coacheurban.com. That's Coach E, first initial, urban, as in urbancowboy.com, and learn all about it. I've got some great resources there. I've got a blog. I'm also a member of Forbes Coaches Council. I've got my own podcast, Great Coffee Chat, which is casual conversations that catalyst change.
Cool.
So all kinds of great goodies to check out.
Fantastic.
Learn more.
Well, we'll make sure that is all in the show notes here. But no, I really appreciate it. This is a fun conversation. I think we probably went into a little more detail than I expected we would, and we could probably be here for another 2 or 3 hours talking about it. And if we hadn't just decided that the new output of the format was to be 45 minutes long, then I probably would try to dive in a little bit deeper. But this has been great. I appreciate it. And definitely anyone listening that wants to learn more, fantastic resource we've got here. Check it out. You need to talk to Erin. There's a lot you can learn here. And this really, truly is the number one thing that's going to change your workplace right now. So thank you very much. And I appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.